Here's a joke for all you mind readers out there. Hey kids, Adam here, part 3 of the Nature of Bass mixed breakdown video series. This is the orange section, or orangish red section. Let's get right into it. This is going to be a longer video. I apologize for that. There's a lot going on in this section. See you in a couple minutes. Seconds? How about this? All right, we're over in Reaper. Here is the orange section in all of its glory. I wanted to have it be the red section, but if you can see over here as I scroll over, all of my sends I make red because that way they stand out to me in a project. Now granted, this project is completely different because it's done differently than I would do one of my band projects, but I didn't want to make everything red because then I would get my brain, you know, confusion. This was the hardest section for me to do. This is the part that probably took 10 years to put together and has changed 50 times. I kept changing my mind about what I wanted to do, kept changing my mind about how I wanted it to sound. I was thinking about doing all sorts of crazy things. I finally decided to just sit down and basically brute force this thing. So, without further ado, this is the orange section, also the bass solo section. I will play it for you in all its glory. Here we go. All right, let's start breaking it down. We'll start with the drums. The drums for me was really what helped me get this from changing my mind and doing 50 different solos every year to actually getting this thing done. I had an old sample that had this tambourine in it and the kick didn't really come out too well, and it just wasn't working for me. So I finally decided, you know what? I wanted this to be all loops, but let's get the drums the best that I can get them. I didn't want to turn this into a band song for my band, so I didn't want to get the drummer to play. So I said, let's just use Easy Drummer. It's the next best thing. I won't go through all the Easy Drummer stuff internally. I'll just go through once I got the parts into Reaper, what I did with them. I used the vintage kit. I'll bring it up here. Just the Easy Drummer 2 vintage basic standard kit. Didn't make any changes. I didn't use any of the presets. I just chose the absolute, you know, the number one basic. I left the reverbs and things in there the way they were. I went back and forth trying to take them out and adding them back in. I finally decided to just leave them in. I found a pattern that worked really well. And then towards the end of this, I found a really cool fill. So there we have it. It's the same loop through the whole thing. I didn't make any changes. There's a crash at the end. It's just the same loop. So here we go. Play the drums right as they are with no effects. It's just straight out of Easy Drummer. So there will be some reverb and things on there that Easy Drummer puts in. But this is essentially what Easy Drummer is doing by the default. All right, I'll solo out the kick and we'll start there. Here's a tip for Easy Drummer. If you want to have a drum bus, create another folder for it. You can't put any effects on this Easy Drummer track, I found, and you can't really do any other sends because they're doing sends from within the drums itself in the multi-channel mode. So just create another folder for it. That's your drum bus. We'll do the kick, solo this out. And I started with a PuigTec. I use this on most of my kicks. Really adds thump. SSL channel really adds definition. There's a pretty big bump here, like 8.5 dB at 5K. Another 6 dB bump at just shy of 2K. Took out that boxy and then bumped up this 60 hertz. And then I needed another channel, so I dipped out 121 on the bass for where the bass is with ReEQ. And then I added this Wavesfactory. There's a video on this. I will put a link to that. One of these two corners. This is the sub kick. And then I added in my standard drum sends, which I didn't use all of them. I used parallel compression. I used my clipper. I used the max bass for even more thump. And I used drum punch for more definition. All right, moving on to the snare. Pretty quiet here without all of the... Let me add the sends in first. So parallel compression will add a lot of the volume. Exciter adds harmonic frequencies. Clipper. And punch will add definition. And then SSL channel. High pass filter. A boost up here at, 4K or so. A little cut at about 3K. Actually, 700 hertz, sorry. And then another cut right around 300 hertz. And a little boost for kind of the body of the snare. And that's at like 240 hertz or so. Then I added JS saturation. Overheads. All it is ReEQ. High pass filter, 2 kind of mid scoops, a boost, and then a low pass filter. So before and after. And then I added that to my drums exciter. There's a stereo room verb that's just a track that came in through Easy Drummer. I didn't do anything to it. I just left it as is because all the drums are already sent to it. I didn't want to screw around with it at all. But I did mess with this mono room track. All right, add the reverb in. We'll show you the effects one at a time. Start with this 73, and I'm essentially just doing the preamp thing where I'm running this through the preamp with no extra effects or AQ or anything on here. I do the same with the HLS. Kind of slamming this in. Same with the Kramer tape. And I'm really slamming it. You can see it's probably distorting it here. Compression. That's so you can probably still first start to hear it. And then I just do an EQ with a high pass and a low pass to take out the harshness and the rumble. And then the Abbey Road Saturator. So I'll crank the volume up here. It's at -20 almost. So before everything, it's just like a mono room mic. Doesn't really add anything. Adding the verb and all the effects. And then I blended it in. I brought the meter all the way down, blended it into where I thought it sounded good. And then on the drum bus itself, I'll just solo the drums here. I added my short reverb, my room reverb. And I added some EQ here, just a little bump at 260, and that's to kind of bring out the body of the snare and some of the low end. And then a shelf boost at 5K. Just a little bit added, not much. SSL bus compressor works great on drums. Hitting this about 3 dB gain reduction, not too bad. Ratio of 4:1, and I leave this on auto release. I think it works best for that. And then Kramer tape. So now I have decent sounding drums. All right, so let's get into the instruments, and most of these are like arpeggio things, raindroppy things, octavey things. So we'll go to the first one here. It's a little octavey thing. I actually at one point did like a Billy Sheehan tapping style octave thing where I was doing ba 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 ba, almost a percussive thing. I couldn't get it to sound as good as I wanted it to. There was too much. I either had to put way too much compression on it where I couldn't back it off, or not enough, and it just decided not to go with it. So this same thing as almost all the other sounds, SSL channel and saturation. If I turn both on, it's, really some of the same moves I've been doing throughout this whole series. So we'll do without effects. And then with. And with the reverb. Kind of makes everything stick out more. Next one. This is kind of like a chordal progression of arpeggios falling down, kind of, I think of it as like rain or crackling fire type thing. So again, same exact things I'm doing with everything. SSL channel, and this is probably getting boring by now. So same thing I did here, a little boxiness out, 2 boosts, and then JS saturation. And we'll do before and after here. And then hit it with the reverb too. All right, next one is this. It's called Single Note Growl, and it is exactly what it sounds like. And for this one, basically just boosted the bass, took out some boxiness, and then I added the, actually didn't even add saturation to this one, I added some verb to it. It's one of those that's not going to stick out all that much really at all, but it's just kind of an added effect for everything else going on. So if I play all 3 of these at once, one more time, you can tell something's going on, but you can't really tell what it is. Then we get to this next section towards the end, the kind of the fall. Actually, one of them's calling raining down, and there was something else called fallen in this thing. So this, I thought of this as the falling down section. If we're hitting the climax of the song, now we're coming down into the end, right before things happen. So these are like arpeggiated things. So the first one. And for this one, I did SSL channel, pretty big high pass bump, a 4.5 dB boost at 8K, a 4.5 boost at 2K, and then took some boxiness out. And the boxiness the same way. I boosted where it sounds bad, and then I cut back. And then standard compressor, standard everything I've been doing. I did want to have this really, there's this really high pitched note in here. And that tamed it a little bit. And then JS saturation and Kramer tape. And what you have is a before and after. And with the reverb. All right, next one is the one on the opposite side. So this is panned all the way left. This is panned all the way right. And then I'll play the 2 together. Same kind of thing. This is called raining down. And again, same sort of moves that I've done and everything else. So we will do it before and after again. And then after. I'll do this with the left channel. And the last one we have is this one up the middle here. So it's just kind of, almost like a distorted guitar, not quite. And again, this one is SSL channel. Didn't need any compression on this one. All I did is the bass boost and the low mids cut. I found that's really all I needed on this, and then added Kramer tape to it, and with the reverb. So now if we have everything except for bass here. And in the second section here, and I really didn't want it to be too overpowering. I wanted it to go to be underneath the bass lines, because the bass lines are really the meat of what's going on here. So let's look at the bass right now. What I really wanted this to be is I wanted it to be a call and answer thing. Starting out, we have this, I put on my envelope filter and just had the last note. So if we go back to the purple section here, I know I'm cheating here. There's a last note coming out of the bass. So I wanted that to kind of follow up and be the start of this section. So we have this first note, all it is a G and then two harmonics. And what I'll do this time on the bass, I'll add in my Kramer. This is the same trick that I've been using where I put the 700 Hertz, put 2 dB at. I'm going to turn this on for all of these because it's on the bass bus. So what I did for this, I did kind of my standard bass EQ where I have a high pass filter. I notch out for the kick, I boost for the bass frequencies, and then I do 2 boosts. And actually this is the same exact EQ as before. I do my double stack compression the same as before. I do JS saturation the same as before, and Kramer tape. And I'm kind of going through this real fast because this track isn't very interesting. So I have that track. The next track is the first, and you'll notice if you can see the titles in here, and I'll zoom in on this. I have a blue bass, which is right here, and I have a brown bass, which is right back there. Those are my 2 Zon basses. Those are the 2 that I used for this. The blue is I'm going to do a video at some point here in the next couple months where I go through all my basses and different sound samples and what they are and how I've used them and what they mean to me and things. The blue is a soap bar pickup, active bass, modern. I can get a lot of different sounds out of it. The brown is a typical jazz bass. In fact, Zon sold these as they called them the jazz bass of the 90s and beyond, or whatever it is. It sounds very, very Marcus Miller-ish. You'll see that coming up here soon. So for the blue bass, I should say that I recorded it on my pedal board with a MXR envelope filter, bass envelope filter pedal. I usually record 2 tracks, one dry and one with the envelope filter. After mixing this, I realized I didn't even need the dry track at all because this comes through just fine. So that's that part. Next part is where the brown bass answers it. And this is going to be typically brown bass. Jazz is going to be used for slapping. I did slap and double thump in here. If you want me to go through how I did some of these techniques, I already have one that I'm going to do a video on at some point. Let me know in the comments. But here's what this sounds like before effects. And the volume is really low because I compensated a lot with EQ compression on this, or actually the 2 compressors and saturation and things. But same exact settings as before. I basically just copied over the same effects and didn't need to change anything. I did tweak some of the the input gain and the output on the compressor and on the Kramer tape, but everything else is the same settings as before. So I won't even do it before, I'll just do it after. And now you'll notice at the end of each section, I tailed off as I brought in the next bass. I wanted to make it sound like both were playing together. So if you hear the beginning of, or the end of this blue section into the brown bass section, you can hear that wah of the wah cutting out. And then this one in the next section, I tailed it off. You can kind of see where I do these tails on each of them. So this next section, we're shorting it down. First two sections were 4 measures each. Now we're going down to 2 measures each. And I'll play this one. Again, I'm doing the same effects on all of these, except for on this one, I decided I needed to add an exciter because I didn't like the way the notes were coming. So I'll play it before and after the exciter. And then with the exciter on, and it just adds some of those harmonic highs without actually adding EQ. So I don't have to worry about phase issues. I don't have to worry about it stepping over everything else. And that section's real short. Now we move on to the brown answer section. And again, it's all the same. I won't even go through the effects this time because it's all the same effects where I just had to edit input gain for like the compressor. And this one I added the exciter as well. So I'll just play this section. And then the final section where it's back to the blue bass to end. I wanted to kind of end this section with my blue bass because it's my #1 bass that I always use. It's my go-to. I always grab it. You haven't seen it in a lot of videos here because I just got 2 new ones behind me, but we'll see it a lot in the future. So here's this final one. And let me know if you want to figure out how I did this. All right, that's the end of the orange section. Apologies if this ran long. This was one of the hardest sections for me to put together in this song. And this literally took 15 years to finally finish. Now, when I say 15 years, I wasn't working every day on it, every week, every month, even every year. There were sections of 2, 3, 4 years at a time where I didn't even open up a project and I, oh yeah, there's that thing floating around there. I got to do something with that. But this was what was holding me back in this project. I'm really glad I was able to finish it. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, share it, hit the little bell. If you want to buy me a Coke, there's a link down below. If you haven't heard the song by now, I guess you'd like hearing it in separate parts, or maybe you just found this orange part for some weird keyword search. Until next time, where I'll do the final section, that'll be the blue section. See ya. Hey kids, Adam here. Part 3 of the Nature of Mace. I don't think that's right.